Over to me. Hi,
Yeah.
everybody. Good evening, and thank you for coming. Do appreciate it. Remember, it is recorded, so you can actually look at it later. And thank you so much to Claire for agreeing to do this for us. I'm just as usual going to give you a very, very quick. Sorry, it says GCSE there, doesn't it? Just a very quick intro. I know a lot of you know this, but I'll be quick. I normally am too quick, as you all know. So remember, if you haven't, log on to the website. It's really important to go on the website because when you do, you will go on to put in your details so that you will get hold of Dawn, who does the e-shots. They don't go out very often to your emails. We don't inundate you, but we do put everything, or Dawn does. And then we've got the Facebook groups, remember, so we've got Textile Teacher Centre specific to you and the A-level one, but we've also got the Textile Skills Centre, which is for everybody. But if you're a teacher on here tonight, please do go on and get onto the Facebook group because that's where you'll learn a lot of information from everybody, where you'll meet lots of friends. Remember, we've got a YouTube where this will also go on, and there's a lot of other careers chats on YouTube. We have quite a few from students and designers and fashion designers and costume, etc., etc. So if you're doing anything for Careers Week, do have a look on there because there's quite a lot. Do follow us on Instagram. That's me. I do the Instagram. So I'd really appreciate if you go Textile Skills Centre and follow us on Instagram. Instagram's always a good one because it has all the giveaways. Yeah, go on Instagram. I'm sure there'll be another giveaway soon. The moment we've got lots of vouchers and competition giveaways and things like that at the moment. So have a look. Lots of face-to-face courses. Remember, if you are an ECT, you get a very good discount. Oh, Faye's trying to get in, let me admit her. Or if you are paying for yourself, you get a discount. So have a look at some of our face-to-face courses. If you want to know anything about them, ask me. We're also at the Big and D&T Meet this year because Dawn's actually organising it, so obviously it'll be the best one. Remember, we have lots of online on-demand courses as well. So have a look at them. Some of them are short, littly ones, which are quite cheap, and then some of them are much longer. And there are loads on there. If you want to talk about any of those, let me know. We have a mentorship program. Did a big one on Sunday with a girl, one of our friends. So yeah, I'm a mentor. Lots of mentors. So if you get onto the website and you need any advice or you just want to sound off to somebody, that's what we're there for. That's completely free. Next tea and chat, a lot of you are already logged on to this one. It's the 5th of May and it's with Lou Harrison. And she is a interior designer, print interior designer, but she also does murals. So she's going to do a talk and a demo, which is quite fun. I did meet her the other week and she's just a darling. She's so lovely. So if you want to do that, I'm sure Dawn will put the link in if you're there, Dawn, if you've got the link. Remember, we've got a shop, so we've got pattern packs, we've got schemes of work, we've also got little things like t-shirts and aprons if you fancy one of those too. So there's lots of things in there. If you want to talk to me more about those, please come and see me. We sell the pattern pack. Well, we sell actually both of those extremely well. Not that I can boast about it, but we do. Looking ahead, we've got some wonderful things happening ahead. You probably already know. If you don't, please pass on to any primary teacher that you know. I have done with Dawn a whole series of primary resources. They're massive primary resources. They are free, but they need to come to either one of the online sessions, which are only an hour in the evening, and we've got one after school, or that come to one of the online events, the face-to-face events. If you're interested, you're not probably maybe not primary here, but if you know a primary teacher, please tell them these are like massive free resources. The thing we're
They're
doing,
great.
the next
Can I
free,
just stop? They're
yeah,
great for KS3 as well, Key Stage 3.
yeah,
So these
they
things.
are. They are
Sorry.
pretty good for Key Stage 3. So if you want to come on, but you do need to come to one of the online or the face-to-face to get the link to get the freebie. So looking ahead, we're in the middle of doing this, which we're also doing with Claire, which we're very grateful as well. We're going to Claire's uni next week after, pretty soon, Claire. And we're doing a series of career resources or lessons, if you want to call them that, linking education to industry. So clothing manufacture, we've probably a bit of knit, a lot of print, costume, and we're doing a whole thing on new sustainable industries. So being able to get jobs in the future in sustainable industries. So
We're
there's
also
going to
going
be,
to Aston Martin. Don't forget the cars.
yeah, the cars, yes, it's all for boys as well too. With lots of places we're going to and have already been to. We've been to Cosprop, which is a costume place. I'm interviewing Alice Buckingham on Friday, who has her whatever you call it, what do you call it, BAFTAs, and she did the costumes for
Got an
Wicked.
Oscar. They got an
Oscar,
Oscar.
she's got an Oscar. That's it. Thank you. Is an Oscar better than a BAFTA? So we have lots and lots of links, and they're going to be career resources, but they will have tasks in them. So they will not just be, looking at videos, but all these people have been interviewed. They will also have lots of tasks, some small, some design, some make tasks that go with them. So that's quite exciting. If you're very quick, you can scan that. That is, if you want to know anything, that should take you directly to the website. I'm going to leave it on there for a couple of seconds. And it's going, and I'm going to invite Claire, who's going to chat to us
Just
about.
one other thing. So I went
Yeah,
today to the Guildhall in London for the London Careers event at the Guildhall, which happens every year during Careers Week. If you are London based, or even if you're not London based, there were hundreds of school children there going around they had all the guilds, they had the police force, they had the Nate, they had all sorts of different, they had chefs, they had you name it, all sorts of different stands for kids, for children to go and look at, students to go and look at different careers and different things. So if you are London based even if you're not London based and you're lucky enough to be able to take your students to London during this careers week, make sure you Google it and you go take your kids to
yeah, have a look at
London
it.
Careers event. It's the London Careers event at the Guildhall in the centre, in the city. Okay, sorry. I'm going to hand over to
Fabulous.
Claire
No,
now.
we'll hand you over to Claire, and she's going to chat to us. She's got a presentation about not only her careers, but university as well. Thank you, Claire.
Hi there. Right, I'll just start sharing my slides. So hopefully you can see that now.
Yep.
Brilliant. So hi, so just to say thanks so much to Dawn and Nikki for inviting me to speak to you all this evening, and appreciate the time, whether you're watching it live or you're going to be watching it on record. So yeah, so just to introduce myself, so currently I'm the textile design course leader at Nottingham Trent University, and that follows probably around a 15-year career in industry and working as a designer. So how did I get into my first role after university? So I just thought I'd share a few of the choices that I made along the way in my earlier education. So aside from the GCSEs that I had to do, the ones like English, maths and science, so where I had some choice, I decided to take design and technology, and I specialised in the textile choice, and then also art and design. And then when I moved on to A-levels, I decided to study, and people always comment on the kind of randomness of this mix, but I thought they worked really well together. I did art and design and technology, chemistry, and then with general studies. And I felt that actually the technology aspects and knowing about materiality lent really well with chemistry. And then, of course, you'd have that crossover with the aspects of design. From there, I went on to take an art and design foundation course, just simply because I knew I wanted to work in the creative industries. But when my careers tutor at the time at school presented with me with maybe up to 20 different creative potential degrees, I was at a loss, really. I mean, I wanted to do them all. I could imagine enjoying all of them. So I felt I needed a little bit more time to kind of work, study at university style, and I guess be used to that level and maybe that independence that I hadn't had in my previous educational experiences, just to decide. And from there, I decided to study graphics at the time. On reflection, I perhaps should have done a little bit more research into courses, because I knew that I didn't want to pattern cut at that time. I didn't want to actually manipulate fabric and work with it on a mannequin stand. So I didn't think fashion or textiles was for me, which was the pathway on my particular art and design foundation course. So it was a really useful thing. I identified that I loved image and I loved telling stories with like image, hence why now I've gone on to be a textile print specialist, and that's my specialism on the textile course. So over the last 20 years or so, I've held a variety of different roles, and I've grouped them into these 6 like broad areas. So in a variety of different jobs, I've designed prints and graphics. I've designed girls' wear product and children's wear product. I've been a women's wear designer. I then moved on to menswear fashion coordination. I then set up my own brand. So that's where I kind of like was a bit of a design director over everything. And then currently I've been at NTU for almost 9 years now in my current role. So I'm just going to move on to talk about a little bit about what I designed in the specific roles, what I enjoyed, and what students might get out of them if that's a career path that they think could be feasible for themselves. So when I was working as a print and graphics designer, I did this in 3 separate jobs. And for all of them, I worked at something called a supplier. For those of you that are not aware of what that is, maybe some of the students that will watch this back, it's, for example, a company that might have a range of different designers and creatives working in it, maybe a sales team, and they go out to lots of different like stores and brands and retailers and essentially suggest designs that might be suitable for their customers in store. I've worked for a variety of different customers and I've held accounts at these stores like Marks and Spencer's, George, Very, Next, New Look, and Fred and Florence at Tesco's. And I predominantly worked within girls' wear. It was something that I really, really loved. And I've just got a few different like types of designs that sold really, really well. Those of you that have obviously been out and seen some of these types of products in store will be very probably akin to noticing lots of girls' faces and characters and graphics, maybe changing in age and sophistication and style in terms of the way that they're drawn or painted, depending on perhaps the age of the shapes that are being targeted. So this was something really, really popular. So if you are a student or people looking at this and you love like doodling and drawing and you're not quite sure where that might land as a skill set, then working on this type of these kind of prints for products could be a really, really nice way in which that you to like draw 24/7 and yeah, make a career out of doing lovely little doodles. Slogans and typography was also really, really popular and sold well at a variety of different brands that I worked across, typically for maybe a slightly older girl that might be coming into being a teenager that's maybe moving out of some of the younger, more elements. So we did this a lot. So we were always thinking about like word puns and playing around with typography. I used a lot of CAD skills for this. So I predominantly worked in Photoshop. So that was quite important, but there was also lots of hand-drawn elements that we'd scan in and then get ready for printing, predominantly screen printing in these roles. And when I was doing this, we sat in a design room that was positioned above the production floor. So when our clients might select certain designs that we'd created that they'd seen in either a meeting or in a online that we'd sent to them, we'd then get them exposed onto screens, and then they'd be printed onto a sample, and then the brands would decide if they wanted to place like a bulk order, which would then go into store. So a few other options. So seasonality was really key, particularly when we were working a lot with t-shirts and vests and small like fabric blanks. That for one of the companies that I worked for, they had a large warehouse. So they held a lot of stock, blanks as we'd call them, in their DC. So if a trend came out really, really quickly, or perhaps something was selling really well in store, we could act really quickly and responsibly. So one of our USPs as a company was that they'd say that they could get a new design, get it actioned, sampled, and then produced within 3 weeks. So that allowed companies to respond really, really quickly, like the retailers that are on the left-hand side of the screen, that they might not have been able to if there'd been some offshore production. So yes, so seasonality and quick response was really key. One of the things that seemed to never end was Christmas in one of the particular jobs. So for example, we started designing these prints, from February onwards, and that would go all the way through till probably when the John Lewis advert dropped, normally like mid-November, and we'd wait to see what was going to be the cute character that year. Is it going to be a boxer on a trampoline, or is it a little penguin? And from that, there'd be lots of kind of like response to that brands would want to get some of the cute characters in to their Christmas offer, as well as some of the other elements that might have been produced overseas. So we played around with, so again, there was lots of mix of different styles. So working with photographic elements, like working with photography, as in like scenic photography, using cute little characters. So and lots of little doodles. So again, for your students that are thinking about how they could utilise some of their sketchbook work, there's lots of ample opportunities to work professionally to enable students to do that. So things that I really loved at holding this role was, I love the variety. I love the fact that I was working for lots of different customers, and perhaps I might have designed a design with a certain customer in mind, and maybe it wasn't something that they wanted, but actually I had the chance to utilize it and share it with other people. I love the fact it was quite fast paced. No 2 days were the same. It was really, really creative, and it was nice to collaborate with all the different designers in the team. It was quite nice actually, because you got quite a quick sense of whether something was successful, in the fact that, because if it did go into store quickly and sell really well, as a designer, that gave you a real sense of pride that you've been successful in what it was that you were setting out to achieve. And then it gave you confidence to, you know, do like move-ons or developments from your original ideas. I think good subjects to study for this particular role are textile design, so textile maybe specialising in print, graphic design. As I say, my degree was geared up more towards graphic design, but actually I think possibly because I'm based in Leicestershire when I first graduated, and I looked at the jobs that were in the local area, there were a lot of screen printers that were looking out for graduates that had Photoshop skills, which, you know, I had an interest in fashion. So I applied and I absolutely loved that role. And I was like, this is the graphic design that I never knew that I wanted to do. But actually, had I properly researched into potential university courses, then it would have been textiles that I would have chosen. And also illustration. So I know some of the illustration students on the course here at NTU are developing the skills that would make them really, really successful in this particular role. So I then moved on to work at a number of retailers. So the first retailer that I think some of like Dawn and Nikki will be able to remember, Adam's Kids, and perhaps some of their older members there, but maybe not some of your pupils, definitely not, because they've been closed down, I think maybe like 10, maybe over 10 years now, unfortunately. But Adam's Kids was the first retailer that I went on to work for. And I was curious to work at a retail after working in some suppliers, to almost like find out how it all worked. And I was originally employed to do solely the prints based on obviously my experience. But actually over time, and just through a series of people leaving and moving on, I actually started to design some of the shapes myself. So I actually started drawing them on CAD, working out what some of the terms were. So I ended up becoming, actually, ironically, a garment designer, as well as designing some of the prints. And you can see that I went on, and then Adams was quite a small team. And as I say, I was kind of like teaching myself. And I actually felt after a few months that I think I know what I'm doing, but I'm not quite sure, because I'm kind of like, in a way, perhaps blagging it. And I'd quite like to go and work at a larger team where someone could actually confirm that what I'm doing is actually correct, and learn from other garment designers. So I saw a job at Next, which was asking for a girls' wear print designer and shape designer. And I felt like, oh, that could align to my skill set. And then I put together a portfolio of work and applied and was accepted. And it was here that did really teach me how to, you know, what different seams were called, what different stitches were called. And then it helped me. And then with that, then I'd create the prints, the textile designs, the all overs, the checks, and then apply them to shapes, which I really, really enjoyed. And then after a few years, I got itchy feet. I wanted to experiment and do some traveling. I'd never done the whole backpacker thing. I'd gone straight into a job after university, and I saw a job at C&A, which was based over in Brussels in Belgium, that I decided to apply for, and I was successful in getting that. So yeah, so me and my then boyfriend, who then swiftly became my fiance. We made the move to move over, and then the designs that you can see on screen were some of which that I created for CNA and baby girls. And then some other designs here. So something that was really key for us within the kidswear team was looking for trends and putting together trend packs to share with some of the supply, like that when I was working at the supplier, I'd design into brands. We'd often put together trend packs that we'd then share with the suppliers that we worked with, but we'd also then respond to them in-house. And on the next slide, you can see, so this was like a little trend that was called Up, Up and Away. It was designed for spring, summer 17. And this slide shows some of the key imagery in terms of like the processes and I guess the elements that we draw, whether it's gable townhouses, little characters with kites or balloons. And these were some of the things that we would then respond to. And it was what we'd present this collection to our buyers before we went away to design it when they were on board and happy with our suggestions, and they were convinced that they were going to sell. So just a few of the things that I'd design in response to that. So a little house all over print. So this was designed for toddler girls, so slightly younger than the older girls market. So there was like this little gabled townhouse that might be printed onto a t-shirt or a printed skirt or perhaps a summer dress. And then on the right hand side, there's a little character design that you can see. It's all annotated with all the different kind of like techniques, whether it's a spotty grosgrain ribbon bow or little gingham printed poplin kite appliques. So again, we chose those kind of like designs. So we think all about that. So this was different in the fact from working solely at the print design screen printers, because I was able to think about all the different processes and all the attention to detail, which was really, really nice to think about. And you can see this was a longer kind of like border print, which would have wrapped around the hem of like one of the party dresses or skirts that were in that particular range. So I really, really loved the handcrafted element to this. I loved being able to sit and draw, but then also being able to scan that in and adding colour and pattern in the background and utilising some of the Photoshop skills that I developed in earlier roles. Being quite adaptable and sometimes being able to be moved across to different teams. So even though I was predominantly focused on girls wear, sometimes I'd fill in on baby boys, depending on if, say, someone had a lot of work on or someone wasn't available. So it's really good to be adaptable. And I'm sure like the pupils that are obviously juggling lots of different GCSEs and lots of different lessons and stakeholders, I guess, with all their different like homeworks and assignments that are in on different days, are probably practicing a lot of those skills that they will go on to need. They might not necessarily be aware of that, but that adaptability and being able to like juggle deadlines is a really useful skill that they'll be developing. And you can see here, again, it was a similar kind of like range that was called Cutiesaurus with lots of must-have details. And then I'd create a kind of little placement design that might go on to a tee or on a baby grow on the chest, and then with a little dinosaur all over print, which again might go, say, in a 2-pack baby grow. And we think about it, particularly with baby wear or like younger areas, we'd often think about coordination was really, really key. And we'd think about gifting across the areas. So again, really, really fun role to play around with. So things that I loved about this particular role was I love the cute factor. It's really, really nice to go out looking to be inspired when you work in kids wear. I like the coordination and the range of techniques and embellishments that I mentioned. So I like to have that scope to add like extra bells and whistles and not just solely print design, which was new for me in these particular roles. And I like the attention to detail, and I guess the greater influence that I had, the fact that I was able to design like the shapes and some of the prints as well. I felt that it made for like a more funner experience, and ultimately I felt it created better product that was more successful. Within those roles, I was very fortunate enough to be able to go on inspirational travel. So we'd often go out to different places and cities that were known for like being particularly like fashion forward and having lots of shops and boutiques that we'd go around and immerse ourselves in the culture, perhaps buy samples, definitely take lots of photos that we could then come back and share with the wider creative team and also with our buyers. So I think good subjects to study to develop the skills that are useful are textile design and fashion design degrees or apprenticeships, depending on what's available to the pupils at the time. So I then spread my wings somewhat. So so we moved back from Belgium, and this role came up, designing women's wear. So this was for a boutique maternity wear. So at that time had been recently pregnant. So again, I was learning from designing from lived experience, having been through those bodily changes and knowing some of the things that perhaps I felt were missing within the current maternity wear offer at that time. And what was nice about Crave, the brand, it was a boutique maternity wear brand. It sold direct from its own website, and it also had a concession on the Next website, where often you'll go onto Next and you'll see brands and you see lots of different brands listed. We were also under that umbrella. It was a really nice, small, friendly team. So I worked really closely with the original founder of the brand, and it was quite exclusive in the fact that it came from quite small drops. And you can see some of the product that I had a hand in designing stacked up there. So this was from a product photography shoot. We booked the model in, and has a very neat bump for being pregnant, doesn't she? That certainly wasn't what I looked like when I was pregnant. But yeah, so thought about the coordination of the range and thought about the different products. It's been really practical, but we also wanted pieces to be elevated and also feel like that little bit special for those occasions, and also being fabrics that we're going to grow. And from a sustainability point of view, that was really important to us. We wanted them to be as versatile as possible. So that was something that we thought about. So how my designs would look before they were sent off perhaps to be manufacturers. So I did a lot of digital drawings. So I'd do lots of research. I'd look at emerging trends. I'd look at what had sold well for the brand in a previous season to make sure that we didn't lose any of those potential sales, but also think about what was going to be relevant for customers in forthcoming seasons. And I'd create these digital drawings to show range plans to kind of like mimic how our website might look, to get confidence for buyers that we might show them to, so then they could select from here, whether it was to go onto their own websites or it might be for the Next buyers, and they would make an edit of what they wanted to sell on the Next website. We'd also use these drawings and we'd put them on technical packs. So they would then go out to the factories, and then the factories would look at the drawings and they'd kind of like give an indication of how much they thought that would cost to manufacture. And then we would work it out, and I'd have a little bit of a hand in negotiation of prices in this role, which I hadn't done previously. I'd sat alongside buyers, so I was aware of what they'd had done, but I'd never done that myself at this stage. So that was like that was a steep learning curve, but it was also quite nice in the fact that I then I could make sure that nothing that was the most important thing about a particular design that I'd created was almost like costed off, which sometimes you didn't necessarily have that control of when you weren't involved in those conversations. So you can see some of the prints and the tunics that sold really well. And again, you can see some. So here I was designing for the print, so playing around with like digital drawings and some hand drawings. The coral design that kind of has that drop shadow is depicting that it's laser cut. So we have a laser cutter here at NTU, where students can digitalize their files using paths in Illustrator, and then they take it down to the laser cutter and it can cut through leather or plywood or plastic or whatever, any kind of like fabric that they've got. And the factories that we worked with here had that same process. And you can see that there's a few different prints, and again, how they've been manipulated, whether placement prints placed around the neckline or all over designs at different scales. So again, it was nice to be able to use my skills developed through my textile education to be able to work on a variety of different products. And here you can see the same, so playing around with different all over prints and then applying them to different designs that went on to be manufactured on our behalf. We did some UK manufacturing here, so we worked with manufacturers in Leicester and also in Poland and Romania. So we worked mainly with European and British suppliers here, which hence lies the fact that it was like luxury and a boutique brand, because it was more expensive to buy to have pieces manufactured in those countries. and you can see. So I was involved with some of the campaign imagery. So this was really nice because it was a small brand as well. We wore many hats, so we had like a really wide remit of roles. So it was nice to be able to go down to and help. I had a hand in selecting the models, the actual location of the shoot, and directing the photographer take some of the imagery, which perhaps I wouldn't have had so much of a say in if I was working at a larger brand, just because they would have had a specific team. Say Next has a specific team to do this kind of thing. But again, if you work in a smaller brand, then you get to like try out and learn lots of different things. Just a few other ones there. I'd often look for like new emerging trends. So whether that could be like, oh, crop tops were predicted in the trend books that I'd look at to be really, really important, or whether it was like the peplum, which is kind of like a fluted panel towards the hem of a top. So that at this particular time was quite popular and important. So we would design like packs to see how they would play around. So again, like for fashion design students that are thinking about are often making waistcoats or corsets. I know for like GCSEs or A levels, they're learning really, really valuable skills that they can then like build upon that understanding of construction and pattern cutting to help inform some of these designs. So aspects that I loved about being a women's wear designer. So I loved the fact that I could combine both print and shape together and work alongside other members of the team. It was nice to be able to create full ranges because it was like a boutique brand. I had a sense of all the different products. So the jersey product, which is like the kind of like stretchy fabrics, as well as the dresses and the bottoms. We had a strong sense of customer because obviously it was a boutique brand. So we had our kind of like muse in mind, who she was, where she shopped, what she enjoyed. So it was quite nice to put yourself in her shoes. And whereas in some of the other places, if it was like more of a broader, like Next, for example, because it obviously is so widespread, there's lots of different types of customer that might shop there. So you're trying to kind of create designs that are going to appeal to a wide variety of people, which is quite hard to do. And sometimes you have to almost like tailor a designer, but then also design something else to entice a different person. So it was quite nice here that we knew exactly who we were designing for. And the office was on a farm in the countryside, so that was quite nice. Like on our lunch breaks, we could go and sit out in the sunshine. And having been based often in industrial estates, it was quite nice actually to be immersed in nature. And again, good subjects to study for this: textile design and fashion design are going to help teach you and help you become experienced in the skills that you'll need to flourish in this particular role. So then moving on, I then moved on to actually menswear. So I'd been designing for a few years by this point. I'd moved over to Brussels, and I'd been in the children's wear team for a little while, and then a promotion opportunity came up, which I was eager for. I'd been designing for about 10 years at this stage, but the seed was planted to say there is a role for you, but actually you'll need to move across to menswear. Now, I hadn't done menswear at that stage, so this was a bit of a new challenge, but I was like, yeah, go on then, let's go for it. Let's have a go. And what was unique about this role was actually I wasn't responsible for actually designing anything myself. What I was tasked with, it was a particular brand within C&A. It was called 1841. So that was kind of like a boutique, like denim wear style heritage brand that was in lots of their like larger stores dotted all around the continent. C&A, for some of the school children that be listening along, probably won't be a store that you've heard of. We used to have it in Britain, but it left the UK in about 2001, so about 25 years ago now. But actually on the continent, it's still massive. There's lots in South America, in Mexico and Brazil. It's huge in Germany. It's like the market leader. So we were thinking about, when I was designing, I was thinking about all the different kind of like customers based around the globe and making sure that there was items in the range that would be useful for those customers. So what I was tasked with in this particular role was working with all the different product teams. There was 31 different designers that worked across menswear and thinking about how things could be coordinated together. So I'd think about what shirts were going to be in the range, and then I'd produce like a briefing pack for the shirts designers, and you can see on the right hand side for the tee designers, And then for the outerwear team, so I'd say, okay, 3 options. There's 3 jackets that we have space for in store, and I'd suggest some ideas. Sometimes it was more kind of like a general overview, or you can see on the right hand side here with the bottoms. So I knew I wanted 3 coloured bottoms, and I'd give them some direction in terms of like, you know, I wanted it to be slim fit because I knew that would work well with the tops that I'd got lined up. And you can see here. And then, so this then came in, and then we'd plan out the rails. So here, the designers would go and they'd create those, and then I'd kind of like put them together in ranges. C&A worked really, they were really transparent or particular about how they wanted things to be displayed in stores. So they'd give really visualized like merchandising packs to their stores. So we really thought about that in the creative team. So again, this was something that hadn't had that level of detail or control over before, to know exactly where something is going to go in store and what it's going to be positioned alongside. So again, that was quite interesting, even down to like the tables that you'll sometimes see when you go into certain stores, like Zara often have like little tables of teas. We knew exactly when we were designing in store where they were going to go. They even have such a thing there where there'd be a table that was 2-sided, and one side would be called table A, side A, and the other side was side B, and side A was the one that faced the door. So that was the one where the most popular stuff would go, the things that they thought, and whereas the more maybe risky stuff would be on side B, for example. So you really the designers really had that like kind of like foresight and knowledge. So one of the things that I do is I'd look for trends. So I really like this element, this particular role. I'd look for emerging trends, what was coming through and was predicted to be new, but then I'd look at the colours. So I'd go into trend books and look at some of the predicted colours, but then also think about what was right for the C&A customer, and make sure it was understandable and acceptable for that particular customer. And for any given range, as well as selecting the palette, I'd then also think about the key details. What were the must-have elements, details, whether it's like knit structures, particular colours, like the shawl colour or the toggle fastenings. What were those kind of like key details that were must-haves in this particular range? And just another example here, so Mexicana, so another range that was going in spring, summer. So again, some of the key details here were like the ikat print, so bronze and tarnished metal trims, or shadow checks, or melange, or like mile style jerseys. So that was really important. And then we'd share that with the wider team, and then they'd go about in there. So the outerwear teams would produce jackets to create with it. The t-shirt and the graphic designers would create prints that would then marry with the shapes that the t-shirt garment designers would have created. So it gave me a really nice sense of ownership, even though for the first time I wasn't actually hands-on designing. So I stepped back from some of the detail, but had more of an overview of control. So things that I loved about this kind of coordination role is I loved the camaraderie and working in like a big international team. So it was a multinational team. There was like 19 different nationalities that were working in the team. So that was really new. I realized that I spoke too fast because the office spoke international English. And actually, you soon realize that the people that are worse at speaking international English are actually British people that speak English, because we speak so fast. I love the adventure. So living and working in Brussels for the first time was great. Menswear for the first time. So it seemed to me at a time where there was lots of newness coming through menswear. So I felt it was really exciting, and to be coming up with lots of ideas. And yeah, I felt like pride in researching and identifying these new trends and then seeing them filter through into store. And again, good subjects to study, textile design and fashion design are good, but also students that perhaps might go on to study buying as well, perhaps would lend themselves well to a coordinator role as well, having that eye to detail and being able to like work with different people. So then something different. So around the time, so when I was working at C&A, we ended up moving home because I was pregnant, that I mentioned before, and we'd also recently got married. So actually, when you're a creative person, you're planning a wedding, you actually spend a lot of time thinking about all the creative details, your colour palettes, your invites, and all that kind of thing. And I just loved being immersed in like discovering this new industry that I didn't really know anything about. And then when I was married, little bit of not an anticlimax, that is like kind of like, but it's almost like, what do I do now with all this free time that's available? And I didn't necessarily want to say goodbye to that. So I actually thought about, is there something within the bridal industry that I could do? And yeah, so using some of the embroidery skills or the know-how that I developed throughout earlier roles, I decided to set up my own brand of bridal headpieces. So I did lots of research behind the scenes on this. I used some of the skills perhaps in like doing the photo shoots that I'd done in Crave, like getting to know photographers and observing how people had directed shoots. And I decided to launch my own brand. So yes, it was ethereal and whimsical bridal adornments. I sold it from my own transactional website that I set up, and also sold pieces within selected bridal boutiques across the UK and in Ireland. So this was really different in the fact that the book essentially stuck with me. I was responsible for everything, the design, the branding, the marketing, invoicing, even deciding on the prices of the headpieces. So this was all really new to me. And the images that you can see on the bottom of the screen, some from a photo shoot. So I chose the models. I kind of like decided on what hairstyles I wanted and directed the makeup artist and the photographer, and to shoot them as I foresee them working best for the range. So this was another kind of like photo shoot, so like almost like a campaign shoot for my second collection that I designed, which is called Botanical Crush. I was fortunate enough to receive recognition quite quickly from launching this. So I was nominated for a variety of different awards and went on to win the Bridal Buyer Best Headdress Designer Award back in 2014. So that was within 8 months of me setting up, and I was up against some quite big names in the, like Jenny Packham, who some of you might have heard of, who dresses like the Princess of Wales. She was in the category, and randomly I beat her, which was like a bit of a claim to fame when there was headpieces that were just made on my kitchen table in Hinckley in Leicestershire. So it just shows you that, you know, if you have a little bit of a dream and a bit of luck, that you can kind of like work hard and be successful. So some of the things that I learned, so aspects that I loved the fact that it was all mine, that I had control. I love that creative and personal freedom. Also that buzz when a bride chose a headpiece. Sometimes with that own website, you'd get like a little ping. It'd be like, ping, someone has ordered. You're like, oh my God, what have they ordered? And you go on and have a bit of a look. And that was really, really nice. And it was great to build relationships with people that ran bridal shops up and down the country, which was really, really nice. And then obviously the brides themselves, I often made pieces to order. So brides would see some of the set designs and then they would order through my website, as I mentioned, and then there'd be about 4 to 5 weeks where I'd then go away, make the piece and ship it out to them. So you'd often stay in contact with the brides. They'd send you photos of when they had worn it on their wedding day. So that in itself was really, really lovely. So good subjects to study to be successful if you're interested in doing something similar. Textile design, again, with perhaps a focus on embroidery or surface pattern design, fashion design as well, because obviously that stitch and being aware of trends, and or even like fashion management and branding courses could also lend themselves well for those kind of like more the management of the critical path in the creative process, but also thinking about branding as well could lend themselves really well. So moving on to where I am today. So a job came up, the particular job that I've got, it was advertised in the summer of 2016. And I was actually at the time on maternity leave with my second child at the time. And so it wasn't when it was advertised, my baby was only 2 months old. So it was kind of almost like the perfect job at completely the wrong time. But when I read it and I'd been wanting to like get into education for a little while, it just felt like a perfect fit. They wanted a textile print specialist. Because I'd become senior in some of the teams, I had mentored and taught some of the younger members and graduates. So I felt like I'd been doing similar. I'd been like kind of like developing the similar skill set, but in a slightly industry facing role. So I've been the course leader And I also work most closely with final year students. And the course here at NTU has multi-specialist pathways. So students after their first year decide if they want to be printers or knitters or weavers, embroiderers. They still work really multidisciplinary, but they have they have one area where they really, really deepen and foreground that specialist skill. If you want to learn more about the course specifically, that QR code will link you through to our course page to learn a little bit more. So just to show, this website here shows some of our previous graduates from last year. So the course itself, as I mentioned, explores the different areas of textile design, and our graduates will go on to work in design, just like I've typified, buy-in, but also merchandising roles. They might go to work internationally in global sourcing. They might go on to develop product for companies like Ted Baker, Aston Martin. So you mentioned we've got one of our students is now, one of our graduates from last year is a marketing executive actually within Aston Martin. We have students that go on to work as colour material and finishes designers. One of our graduates from last year came back to give a talk to our current students. She is now working for a brand that designs the interiors for luxury aircraft cabins. So there's such a variety of different roles that students to go on to, and in addition to some of the experiences that I've talked through. To give you a bit of an idea of some of the samples that students create, so we have university courses and obviously lots of businesses that students can undertake apprenticeships in if those opportunities arise. There's loads of different machinery and processes and hand-led processes. Many of the skills that I'm sure Dawn and Nikki develop through their processes with some of their sessions that they run themselves, and with the expert practitioners they're in contact with across the industry. So again, these are some of students that graduated from our course last year. And again, if you want to have a little bit and maybe share this site with your students within lessons, you can get access to that through the QR code there. All of these students, when you click through, you can go in, you can see more of their actual practical and final collections. There's links out to their students' Instagram pages. So again, you can go and find those students and see what they're up to when they were on the course and afterwards, if that helps paint a picture of what's achievable and attainable to students that might be thinking about studying a creative degree, but maybe see a lot of perhaps some of the political rhetoric around at the moment, talking about creative arts courses, which isn't necessarily coming from a place of actual lived experience. So it's really nice to be able to, I guess, champion how many varied and wonderful opportunities and roles and career paths students can go on to carve out within the creative industries, and specifically textiles and fashion here. The course itself at NTU, we have our own Instagram account. So do please give us a follow at NTU Textile Design. That will give you an opportunity, your students or yourself, to stay up to date with all the different goings on the course. No 2 weeks are the same. And we are forever sharing lots of our current students' work on our stories. So again, that gives you an opportunity to see the types of work that our students and facilities get to utilise and undertake. So I think that's about it in terms of my slides. I think we've got a few minutes left for questions. I hope that was what you were hoping for, Dawn and Nikki, in terms of giving a bit of a career overview and talking through. So just on there, you've got my email there for anyone that wants to get in touch. Oh, thank you.
That was perfect. Exactly what
absolutely what amazing. So much on there.
Has anybody got any questions for Claire? Just quickly. No questions. I haven't got any questions either. You just went through everything. It was brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
Somebody's saying,
so inspiring.
So inspiring and helpful. Very inspiring.
Oh,
and
thank you.
Quite a varied career, considering you started it as a graphic designer and you did all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say to. Oh, sorry, Nikki. Go.
I was going to ask a question. That was all. Did you find? I don't know where you first learned Photoshop. Was that at university? And how useful was it?
Well, to be honest with you, I did learn Photoshop to a point when I was on my course. However, it was obviously going back some years ago. So we only had access to Photoshop in the CAD suite that was only open 9 till 5. So whereas the library computers at the university at the time were open 24/7, none of those computers actually had the design software. So I learned it enough to the point to service the designs that I created on my course. But where I really, really cut my teeth on it was in my first job as a print designer, when I was basically using it 40 hours a week. And that's when I think in the first 3 months of that job, that's where I really, really got to grips with CAD. How we run the course here, I guess maybe because it was like a textile design focused course, there's lots of opportunity to develop CAD and practice and play around. But students will do that, I guess, in balance, in terms of, obviously we've got lots of practical machinery, facilities, and students, sometimes they're really digitally focused. Often, sometimes they're more like hand traditional process led, and CAD is a part of that, but it's just a smaller part of their skill set. I think it really just depends on what students are most interested in.
We've got Sonia is asking, do you welcome student groups to visit you at the university, the workshops, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got there is an open day on Saturday, and I know that's obviously like geared up for students that might be thinking about university study in, like, if not this year, but maybe in the next couple of years. But there's also we've got a schools and colleges outreach day, I think on Thursday, the 12th of May. And yes, if people are interested, then yeah, absolutely. And if I know that you come in, if the degree show's open, I'm happy to like meet groups and just walk you around and just show some of the, I guess, the wealth of our equipment that we have here, but also the types of work that students go on to create. Because I think one of the things that has been mentioned to us when we go down to New Designers, I don't know if any of you take your students to New Designers in June down in London. We don't have a house style here, and I think that's something that I'm quite proud of, in the fact that we don't shoehorn students down a path that almost like serves our kind of like agenda. We let them kind of like be led by them, which is why we always have such different like outcomes coming out, whether it is like designing for automotive, designing babywear, textiles. I had one student 2 years ago who went to go and work at the Royal College of Art. She designed everything in virtual reality. So she'd come into a tutorial with a headset, and I'd have to put it on, and I'd be looking like that and trying not to trip over the tables or hit someone because I'm looking like that. Like, so that it's like anything goes in a sense.
Brilliant. That's brilliant.
I used to take my students to New Designers. They loved it.
Yeah.
My A-level students in year 12, to give them a feel. I think New Designers is great to give students a feel.
Yeah, it's really, really good.
Madeline is asking that she's got lots of students wanting to design on iPad and electronic drawing. Obviously, this is still valuable. Would you encourage them to still learn traditional CAD?
Traditional CAD. I mean, to me, I see that as part of CAD. So yes, so they're digitally drawing, but yeah, we'll have tablets and things like that. I think it's good to know how to use like paths with your mouse or with like the pen tool. But yeah, no, I think that's perfectly fine. The only thing about some of the drawing programs, like maybe like Procreate, it does Procreate with its layers will map into like Photoshop, but there's perhaps a limit in terms of how big you can scale it. For example, if you might be drawing for a wall mural that some of our students might do, and they've drawn quite small digitally, actually when you try to scale it up, you might lose some of the resolution, so you might end up having to like redraw it more closer to its intended scale. But for some things, I think it's great for like, like if you suddenly like pick things up and obviously with some of the brushes that are available, you can create some really, really beautiful things. Again, it's another skill to perfect.
Great. I think that's it. Nobody else got any questions. So we'll be going to, as Nikki said, we will be going to NTU. I think it's next week, actually.
Tuesday. Yeah, week today.
Tuesday, yeah. And we will be doing
yes, it is.
We will be doing some filming in all the different areas, which will be used as part of this project that we're on, which is creating careers video resources. So please look out for these. We will let you know, obviously, when we've actually launched them. And they will be free to, obviously, to you guys. So do look out for those. We're very excited to be coming over to Nottingham, Claire. So looking forward to that.
Yes, no, it'd be great to see you. And likewise to anyone that's watching afterwards, or any of the teachers that have listened this evening, if anything like crops up, of course, like do follow up with me on email. I really want to obviously like champion textiles, make sure that anyone's like that's unclear about I guess the vast potential of transferable skills that the course develops is, has all the information that they need.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Claire. And thank
Brilliant.
you everybody for coming tonight and listening. As I said, this will be going up on YouTube. So for anybody who wants to watch it again, or if you want to go on to tell other people about it, then that's brilliant. Just tell them where they can find it. So I'm just going to say goodbye, and I'm going to stop recording.